Hello citizens and welcome back. As CitizenCon draws near, many of us are wondering what CAG are going to present, especially given the shortened online form of the event. And while I do have my own predictions, that's not what I want to talk about today. There is a much more important question that weighs on my mind. Last year when Chris Roberts took the stage in Manchester, he said that most of CAG's resources are committed to finishing Squadron 42 for the 2026 release. However, with the few resources left, the focus for the Persistent Universe will be a year of playability. So my question is, has it been a year of playability so far? And I don't think there is a short or a simple answer. I'm sure most of you have your own opinions, and I would love to hear them in the comments, of course. But I think before we dive into what actually happened this year so far, we should talk about the promise of a year of playability itself. I think all of us have a different understanding of what that means. I think the general consensus is that no major features are planned to be released, which turned out mostly true. But where we diverge is that some players expected a heavy focus on stability and fixes and less focus on content, while others expected a lot of new content and a few minor features. Personally, I expected a compromise between content, fixes, and minor features, and for the most part, that's what we got. However, I would agree with many of you that I expected more. And those of you who follow my content on a regular basis know that I've been very critical of some of the patches and content we had this year, and we will get to that in a moment. First, I would actually like to take a closer look at stability. I actually think the stability of the game itself has improved significantly. I've encountered only a few server errors and performance has been acceptable, outside of high traffic events like the resource drive or supply or die. But that's to be expected to an extent. However, I was hoping for some improvements in persistence and how reliable it is. And I think we've actually seen a regression in this area, especially since I have seen many new in-game only items or ships introduced through Wicklow, and these items are usually first to go when a patch drops, which is not ideal given how much time and effort it takes to get them. And the persistence issues extend to many other items that should persist, and the only reaction from CAG has been to promote a workaround that rarely works, as evidenced by myself and many others losing ships, components, or armors. This year would have been perfect to work on improving persistence, and CAG seemed to have completely ignored the opportunity. Moving on to content and features, CAG started the year with some major technical debt caused by server meshing. It quickly became apparent that a big portion of systems and many missions were not adapted in time, which, especially at the start of the year, severely limited content outside of the mission of the month, and it limited the options designers had when creating the monthly event, which again I see as a missed opportunity. But it's difficult to blame CAG for it, as they had very limited resources to do everything planned for this year. But this lack of progress and even a perceived regression in technology has to mean that there was plenty of good content, right? Well, it depends. If you're looking for ships, armors, skins, and all that stuff, you definitely had a good year. However, personally, I think that new skins and patch bundles being sold for every patch are something I would expect to see in a released game, and not quite yet in Star Citizen. If you're looking for events and sandbox activities and other things to do, you probably had a very mixed experience. Yes, we had a whole bunch of events and many new sandbox activities were added. These were all a part of the Region Crisis storyline that is the overall theme for everything this year. However, all of the sandbox activities added this year have one major issue in common, which is that they don't actually feel connected in any way to the grand narrative. If you put Hathor, Stormbreaker, and the new ASD facility side by side, you would see that these are basically the same thing, a place where you can fight to gain some loot or items. And some of those items you need to trade with Wicklow to get some time-limited ships or items, which are likely to be deleted with the next patch. And depending on what you're looking for in the game, this may or may not be enough. But I would argue that regardless of whether you enjoy these activities or not, having to do them several dozen times just to get the specific item or set of items stops being fun after a while. On the other hand, the global events were not much better. While Supply or Die didn't encounter issues that players would consider out of the norm, it still had many performance issues that made it quite painful to complete. But since it was accessible from both Pyro and Stanton, I think the impact was mitigated to some extent. On the other hand, Resource Drive fully revealed the scale of technical debt and hidden issues, with even CAG admitting they didn't handle it too well. And I think the general frustration with the event really soured the mood in the community overall. And performance and bugs were not the only issues with Resource Drive. But I already made a very long video about that, so I will link it somewhere on the screen. So as you can see, the playable content in 2025 so far has been a very mixed bag. While every single event and activity had a lot of potential, it was seriously hampered by the lack of resources, bugs, and technical debt. And in many cases, design decisions and the overall theme of tying everything to Wicklow. And generally, my expectations for the rest of the year are quite low. But that brings us back to the original question. Has it been a year of playability so far? And if you were looking for a very generalized answer, it would probably be yes. The game is playable, there is new content to play, and there is a reason to log in every patch. However, a reason to log in is not good enough. The better question is whether there was a reason to keep coming back. And for many people, there wasn't. They completed the event of the month and moved on. Of course, many players kept playing Star Citizen, some even ignoring the event of the month. Or, at least from people around me, it seems like everyone logged fewer hours in the game. But, on the other hand, everyone who played on a regular basis reports better stability. So, overall, I think 2025 is indeed a year of playability. But to me, there were many missed opportunities and questionable decisions, both of which can likely be traced to the focus on Squadron 42. And that leaves us to wonder what 2026 is going to be like. We know that Squadron 42 is set to release, but we don't know when, and my expectation is that it's going to be released at CitizenCon next year, which leaves us with basically one more year of no resources allocated to the persistent universe, and thus another year of one-time events and monthly content attempting to retain players. And even after Squadron 42 comes out, there is no guarantee that efforts will be shifted back to the PU instead of just continuing to work on the next chapters of Squadron. So in conclusion, it has been a year of uncertainty and inconsistency, and I am hoping that CitizenCon this week is going to bring some clarity. And with that being said, that's all for today. What do you think? Has it been a year of playability? What can we expect next year? Let me know in the comments. As always, if you like this video, sacrifice a like and a comment or even a hype to the YouTube algorithm and subscribe for more. And here's a shout out to my amazing patrons and channel members for their support of the channel and everything else I do. Thank you for watching, fly safe, and I will see you in the verse.